Okay, so I just wanted to start by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, whose land I'm joining you from today, and to thank them for looking after this country that I'm living on with my children, and give my respect to the elders past, present and emerging for caring for this land. And I'd like to also pay my respects to the lands of that everyone is joining from today. So today's topic is rethinking value. And as I said, we have two speakers. Jason hasn't joined us yet, but I'm hoping that he may join us. And we'll be starting with Moira. So each speaker will be speaking for about 25 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A directly afterwards. If you'd like to ask any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or to wait and ask at the end. And if everyone could please keep their microphones muted while the speakers are speaking, that would be great. I might ask you to introduce yourself, if you could, Moira, when you start speaking. And so perhaps after about 25 minutes, what I might do is just hold up or maybe at 23 minutes, I might hold up my phone. So you have a few minutes left, and then at 25 minutes, I'll just let you know. Okay, so over to you, Moira.
Thanks, Monique. Hi, everyone. I'm calling in from Kaurna country in South Australia. I'm down by the beach today. I was hoping to give you a beautiful scenic backdrop, but it is very noisy because everyone's there enjoying it, not the least the seagulls. So I'm here to share with you a little bit about SheEO. So I've popped into the chat the URL for that, so sheeo.world. Just as one of the mechanisms that are out there, many of you would be familiar with revolving credit and SUSU funds, which are very popular throughout Africa, Grameen Bank with the microfinance. There's a lot of those sorts of things. We've just recently Start Some Good and Red Hat Impact. So Tom Dawkins and Cam Neil have set up together for Lend for Good. So there's so many really exciting things that are actually happening in this world. And I just thought I'd introduce you to one that you may not be familiar with it. So it's sheeo.world, and I have popped that into the chat for you. I'm just going to share my screen and talk you through a few things. I'm not going to actually talk for 25 minutes. I'm really keen to get any questions going. But just to give you an introduction to what SheEO is all about. So it began in Canada a few years ago now. We've had it 3 years here in Australia, and there's about 500 Australian women who and non-binary people who are supporting this fund. And what it is we have three kind of phases, if you like, and how it works. So what you can see there is activators, so people like me who make what we consider a radically generous contribution. So it's like a Kiva loan, it just keeps returning back. We don't expect any return. And then what we do together is we have a participatory budgeting process where we decide what are the top 5 ventures that we will support for that year. And so this year we had, I think, about nearly $500,000, might have been a bit more actually, that went into that pot. And we decided who that was going to be spent on through a very simple application process. And they have to be able to demonstrate that they're working on the world's to-do list. So that's our shorthand for the Sustainable Development Goals. And then together we are building this perpetual fund. Our dream is to have a $1 billion global perpetual fund supporting female founders and non-binary people who can pay their loans back over 5 years. And in doing that, that fund just continues to be reinvested into new ventures. So both the annual activator contribution for those who can do it every year, that's great, plus the loan repayment. So that's the way the pool increases over time. And many of you will have had experiences of perpetual funds, or at least know about them, but this is one that have a very strong gender focus and also a very strong sustainable development goals focus. the sorts of people that belong to SheEO and help with this flow of money, and that's what we're really interested in. Actually, instead of it being captured by the capital system, but it starts to flow through. So one of the ventures that were in the top 5 this year was Minka Park, who is a Korean woman based here in Adelaide on Kaurna country. She came to Australia about 20 years ago with not a word of English, connected up with other Korean women in a similar situation to her. And kimchi is the food of that nation. And so she gradually built a community of women who were making kimchi just like her. That's now being sold as a commercial product. And she's now got a co-working space. She's got a co-kitchen space where other businesses are also working there with food. And she's given she was in the top 5, her dream is this year to have a stronger manufacturing base. So as you can see, all the people in those lovely smiley faces there behind it, these are all the people behind someone like Minka. And we've got hundreds of those. And in Australia, we've done our 3rd round this year. So if you go to SheEO.world at the Australian venture, you'll see the 15 businesses that have been supported over these 3 years. And the kind of support the women get is not just the money. There's also a lot of community support. We have a particular mechanism around asking and giving, and they also get very high level world-class mentoring from the business guides that are employed by SheEO to support them in that. So this is our world's to-do list for all of us, not just SheEO, and never been a more important week to be talking about them as everyone's gathering in Glasgow. So any of the ventures, and in fact we encourage everybody who's involved in SheEO to be focusing on the SDGs and working out how we can make contribution in our own little world, whatever that is, towards some of these. So for myself, I'm a founder of the Hen House Co-op in Adelaide, and we're working on closing the gender investment gap. And so we obviously are focusing on number 5, the gender equality. We're also focusing on decent work and economic growth and building responsible consumption as well. So the other things that are of interest to me, and I'm sure to many people who are in the NENA community. This is just a little pictorial of how the ecosystem of SheEO works. So as I said, we have our activators and our ventures. We've got our customers and influencers. So these are the people we're really trying to build our own, I jokingly say it's like our own little stock exchange, making sure that the money is flowing through the community, through our customers to people who can influence policy and change. So one of the big things that's impacting at the moment is just the cost of shipping worldwide. So how that is impacting on the way business is done and the ongoing costs in that. The funding I've talked about, the fact that it's a global network. So we have SheEO well established in North America, both the United States and Canada, in our neck of the woods, Australia and in New Zealand, and also in the United Kingdom. There are members though in over, I don't know, it must be nearly 100 countries, but they're the community that actually come together via country, and the money that is collected by activators in that country stays in that country. So again, this really helps to build both a global network of support and a global network of resources, so people can get support and information from one another regardless of where you live in the world, but the funding will be generated at the local level. And then there's advisors and coaches. So if you are a venture, you will get that high level world-class support from business coaches, but you also get these amazing, because of the network, you get people who are in the community who have all sorts of skills and resources that you might just need yourself. You don't have to be a venture. So one of the ventures that was supported 2 years ago now, Go Events here in Adelaide, she's recently, Sarah Gunn has recently created another part of her program, which is for women leaving prison, domestic violence, people who haven't worked for a long, long time. And she just put a call out to the community saying, I need some more HR policies and practices. Can someone help me? And someone turned up who used to be, in fact, was one of the world leads in our region for Salesforce who did that. So we always say that we've got everything we need in our community. The biggest challenge is to ask. So we practice our ask muscle regularly, and usually there's the giving. So again, that starts to build that whole perpetual understanding of value of being continuous and connected. So just a bit about the business of SheEO itself, its global impact. So there's been over 7,000 people worldwide who have contributed to these funds, 100 ventures worldwide, 5 countries. And you can see that that there's, you know, just a huge support. And like the revolving credit funds, the repayment rate is incredibly high. So we've had over $7 million distributed and a 95% repayment rate. And this is, like, for example, with the Grameen Bank in microcredit, which is predominantly like 97% women, the repayment rate is very high. It's in the 90s plus. So it does work. That's the message I'd like to say. I just want to share with you a couple of the ventures just so you can see how it starts to translate into action on the ground. The first one here is for InDigital, which is based in Australia, founded by the wonderful Michaela Jade. So it's an Indigenous owned and funded business and led business. It's an edutech platform which combines digital intelligence for sustainable communities. So Michaela was out doing bushcraft, and she was a park ranger, and she thought all of these people in the world need to know what we all know as elders, and the knowledge that can be passed on. And when she knew nothing about tech or VR or anything like that, and now she is fully supported by all sorts of organizations. Microsoft have invested heavily, schools all across the nation are using it, and she's really going to scale in a very big way. It's very, very exciting, and we should be proud of the contribution she's making to our tech companies, female founders, but also being able to show now this whole idea of value being rotated around. And then the next one I want to share is something I'm very excited about, one of the New Zealand ventures, Better Packaging. So Bex Pekaski, who runs this business, she and her co-founder, were mums trying to work out how they could have more compostable packaging solutions. And during COVID, when everything was shutting down, obviously it was a big influx with their business because people were moving lots of product worldwide and needing packaging. They also took a little break and said, we want to do something even better than that. What could we do that could actually be cleaning up the oceans as they decompose, not just having compostable packaging? And this week they announced that they have done that. And you can go to their website and have a look at how they were getting ready for wholesale market. And they're calling their product Polyastic. It's absolutely going to be a world game changer and a fantastic week for them to be able to announce that to the world when we are at COP. So you can see that the early investments, like no one was going to invest in them in the early days, but we took, the SheEO community in New Zealand really could see what a wonderful contribution they were going to make. By then being part of those ventures, they got access to all sorts of global support, connections, relationships, science, and here they are changing the world on behalf of all of us. So who are these people? Who are these investors? Radically generous humans. The youngest one is an 11-year-old and the oldest is in her mid-90s. We're all sorts of people, people just like me. I'm a social worker by trade. I'm a grandma. I'm someone who has had a good long career in public service and in community service, and I'm a board director. We're all just ordinary everyday people, but the thing that sets us apart is our radical generosity and our commitment to working on the world's to-do list. So when we do those things, I think we have the potential to change the world. And thinking about value being shared, it is this concept, William Gibson's, that the future is already here, just not equally distributed yet. And that's what we're trying to shift. So that's the end of my piece, and the slides I've sent through to NENA. So if they do want to share them with anyone else or anyone here today, please feel free to request them. You can find me on LinkedIn if you want to track me down to ask anything in particular. But I'll hand back to Monique to see if we've got any questions.
Thanks very much, Moira. That's an amazing project. I wasn't actually aware of it. I have come across Michaela Jade and her work, and I'm really impressed with her work, and I wasn't aware that that was one of the projects. Yeah, thanks for that. So do we have any questions from the audience for Moira? Please feel free to unmute yourself.
I'll ask. Oh, my video's not working.
Is that you, Tanya?
Hi, Tanya, how are you?
I apologise. I've come in very last minute, and it looks fantastic what you've been doing. And I think I'm a member of the Global Eco-Village Network, which is also a global movement. And I'm wondering if there might be some possibilities for some collaboration there.
Sure. Send me an email.
Okay.
You know, we've got a very strong focus on, you know, female founders and non-binary. That's who are the activators. They are the ventures that get supported. And in some ways, it's a closed loop system, the way the internal operating is, but the external community that's built all around that is definitely plenty of osmosis that's possible. And as I said, just go onto the SheEO.world website and you'll be able to see, you know, a bit more about how it all works. And the slides can be available too for people if that's any help to you.
Fabulous. Thank you for all you're doing.
Thanks, Tanya.
Do we have any other questions for Moira?
Moira, it's Eileen here. Wait a second, I don't have my video on. There we go.
Hi,
how are you? Moira, I'm just looking at the website. Are the applications open all the time, or is there a period where you?
Yeah, no, they're not open all the time. We have our season, if you like.
Yes.
And so the season has just finished here in Australia. So we did the announcement of this year's 5 ventures 2 weeks ago, or actually just over a week ago. So usually the call comes out in maybe 3 months before that. So then, and it gives people time actually to build the relationships in the community, get to know one another. And this year's it was very exciting because all 5 ventures were already activators. So it really was from our own community. And I think that's a pretty impressive result after only 3 years.
Good. So you'd suggest that we sort of join the group first?
Yeah, I think so. I think you need to get the experience of all these radically generous women. And there are a few criteria to be a venture. You have to have had a minimum of $50,000 turnover in the previous 12 months. You have to be a minimum of 51% female owned and led. And you have to be domiciled in, you know, you can't be having a business in Canada and operating in Australia. You have to be domiciled here.
It's not really for seed funding. It's really for businesses that are already underway, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's not a seed funding. It's not a seed funding at all. It's more, I suppose, if we use the startup language, it's people who are moving into that acceleration phase.
Good, thank you.
And it's not for ideation if people have just got an idea. All that said, once you're in the community, there are other people, not through the venture process, that may well be interested in what you're doing and be able to provide support. Sometimes that's funding, sometimes it's other resources. And there's a lot of matchmaking that goes on quietly behind the scenes. It's very, very impressive. And yeah, so the value I get from it as a participant, as an activator, is the professional development from a peer group that all think the same way, and a global network around that, and access to different forms of capital and resource raising that I would not necessarily have just like in a startup ecosystem world.
Thank you. Great. Sounds
Great
great.
question. Thanks, Ellen.
Thank you.
I think that's a perfect example of rethinking value as well. Thanks, Moira. So I think we have a question from the room in Brisbane. Oh, no, I can see in the chat they've said the question was just covered.
Yeah, here it is. It was covered, but you're good. Sorry.
I'm Mark. This is Vivian speaking. Can you hear me?
Can someone repeat that question? I didn't hear it.
Yeah, the audio is not very good, I'm afraid. Could someone just repeat that?
Or pop it into the chat so we can all see it if someone's close to the keyboard.
Sorry, is this one at all? Yeah,
That's
that
good.
yeah, cool. Rather different.
Okay.
Sorry.
Hello, Moira. Can you hear me now?
Not so well. Get closer to that microphone.
Let's see. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
All right. Can you tell me a little bit? I'm curious to understand how is the governance around the platform? Like, how do you? Can you give me some more information on that if you have it?
Sure. So the business itself, SheEO, is at a Canadian business, and it's not for profit. So under same as a not for profit would be here pretty much in Australia. And so they are governed by a global board, which is again under Canadian law, all have to be domiciled in Canada. And then for each of the local communities, so here in Australia, we have an Australian lead, we have an Australian bank account, which is really for events and things like that. All the money that we raise locally gets distributed locally, and that's all built into the governance that happens. Because it's participatory, we as the locals, we vote up the top 5. So that's how that governance, we're responsible for voting, and not everyone does, but we can choose to do that. And there's usually 3 rounds of that. The first round is a very simple due diligence. Are they really a business, and are they, got all their legal pieces in? And then we have a second round where we look at all of the information that they want to provide. It's a very, very short form. It's really handy. And then the third, that chooses a short list, like a semi-final list. So we had 25 in that list this year out of an 87 pool. And then the community once again have a second chance to choose their top 5. Does that answer your question?
Yes, is what I'm hearing. Nick here, who's hosting the Turtle Room. Yeah, that was perfect. I love SheEO stuff. I mean, I'm quite involved in like the startup ecosystem, I suppose. And SheEO is just well regarded throughout. Had a few friends that have gone through. So Neighbourlytics and World's Biggest Garage Sale.
Yeah, fantastic. So, and Yaz, so up in your part of the world in Queensland, if you go to the Circular Economy Precinct, so Yaz was one of the very first in the first cohort and going global with what she's doing and being incredibly influential in the circular economy nationally.
Yeah, thank you. Just it's great networking, great to hear all the behind the scenes stuff. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Yes, John.
Yes, thanks, Moira. I'm sorry, you may have said this, I may have missed it, but with your generous activators, is that basically a gift to help? Yeah, it's not a debenture that they might sell after a period of time.
No. It's the concept of radical generosity. So we give our $1,000 a year, $1,100. 100 of that goes into HQ. So we wouldn't even cover costs to look after things here without the foundational support that happens in Canada. So the Canadian government, and as well as the local Canadian BC community and just generous donors, because it's not for profit, have really enabled the platform to get off the ground. I mean, we wouldn't have been able to do that here in Australia so easily on our own. So yeah, so it's fantastic. It's and I always think, it's one of those things about Canadians. They're always great peacekeepers. They're really good at different economic and innovative models and precincts that are very collaborative, things like that. So it's just another example of their gift to the world to all of us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to check, is Jason Lasky in the room there in Brisbane by any chance? He was the other person who was due to present for this session today. So I'm
He
just
is not here.
He's not there?
No.
Okay. All right. So I'm just doing
away, Monique. So I'm just
yes.
wanting to just check if there's any last questions before I.
Yeah. Are there any last questions? And Michelle Maloney is just checking if there's any word on Jason.
Right.
Are there any other questions for Moira?
So please reach out if any of you do want some more information, or go to the website. You know, it is a different model. It's not, in many ways, it's not brand new. We've had revolving fund, revolving credit over the years. So I do think it's another way of looking at that, how you might want to set things up to, if you're wanting to create, you know, co-ops. And I'd also encourage you to look at what Lend for Good are now doing too, which is just about to launch in Australia.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time, Moira, and thank you for everyone for joining us. So I think we can have a bit more discussion if people would like, or we could finish up the session.
So Monique, Nick here in the Turtle Room, one of the people here in real life has a presentation ready to go about shared equity, and so that they're keen to step in if that's a thing.
Well, that would be fabulous.
That's what.
I love this. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I will say goodbye, and I look forward to catching up with you all. Thanks,
okay,
everyone.
thanks so much, Moira. Bye. Yes, we're very emergent here.
Yeah.
So, well, shall I make you actually? You should be able to share screen.
Yeah. I'm unsure where to. Okay. Yeah, we've got it on a USB, and it should be able to go in to here. Yeah, we'll work it out here. This is awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, like we can talk for a few minutes while it's all prepped.
Yeah. Okay, that'd be great. So I think you know, that example from Moira is such a great example of I guess the value of the relationships being equally valuable as the sort of capital and the financial support. Does anyone else have any other thoughts on that, particularly in terms of, I guess, the topic for our talk today, which is about reinventing value or rethinking value?
Monique,
Yes.
right at the end, Moira said something about someone was going to launch something, and I missed it. Was it SheEO or was it something else? Did you?
It was something else. I don't know what it was. Does anyone know what that was?
Did anyone catch it?
Yeah, we've got one in the room here.
Lend for Good? Was it Lend?
Yeah, that's it. Lend for Good.
Thank you.
It's a, I think it will be a peer-to-peer lending platform.
Got you. And it's going to launch in Australia. So is it from overseas? Lend for Good.
It's Australian.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
There's a link there in the chat as well, Eileen, if that helps.
Yep.
lendforgood.com.au.
Excellent. I'll bookmark it. Ah, yes, thank you.
How are you going there in Brisbane?
Yeah, we're just getting it together now. And we can share screen. Yeah?
Okay. So who's our stand-in presenter?
Gary Frommenhoft from Community Land Trust Association. Oh, should I wear it? Okay.
And we'll check out that.
Okay.
This is always the joys of the hybrid delivery.
Okay. And then go.
I can share screen. No, but if I could,
We'll
go ahead and share screen, and
we'll go to present.
yeah, and then share screen. Okay.
Do you want to just do a mic check?
Sure.
And see?
Mic check. Can you hear me all?
We can. Is that you, Gary?
That's me.
Fantastic. So Gary, you've got about probably about 15 minutes.
Okay, fine.
So thank you so much for stepping in.
No problem. I do have a presentation tomorrow as well, so I hope people will come to that. But this one is particularly about a shared equity solution. So I thought I would step in because that was the topic, was shared equity. And one of the ways to do shared equity for housing is a community land trust. And this is an explanation of this solution for Australia. How do you go to the next?
Try clicking on it. This one's like, can you click on that? Try again.
Next, okay.
Hopefully just,
Okay, so why no affordable housing? I like this quote. Why is it that there's no housing, even though there's probably more empty units than there are people needing housing? I thought this was a good quote. And we have an economic emergency. We have runaway land prices, which is obvious to everyone. So why is there no solution to this? Could it be that there's a property lobby that benefits from increasing prices? And also, so this consists of banks, developers, realtors, speculators, builders, politicians, and 8 million homeowners. 2/3 of the people are homeowners, and they're quite happy with the land prices going up. At the same time, there's 100,000 people a year trying to buy homes, which means that the people who want prices to go up versus the people who want prices to go down is 80-1. So there's no chance against that kind of a powerful lobby. And property lobby is very powerful in every level of government. So what's the Australian dream? Buy a house, get rich, owning real estate, and then sell your massively inflated asset and downsize and retire. By the way, I'm American, if you couldn't tell by my accent. It's exactly the same as the American dream. The answer from every level of government is there's a shortage of supply, increase the supply of housing, that'll do it. And it doesn't matter what government you are talking about, they all have the same answer, increase the supply. Well, and here's what they do. They give $74 billion in subsidies for housing. And all that does is drive the prices up higher. And it's a problem of market fundamentalism. Housing is a market failure. And we've had the free market since 1776. And if it hasn't solved the problem in 245 years, it's not going to solve the problem because it's a failure of the market. So trying to solve it through the market is impossible. So why do people make this mistake? Because they are so accustomed to competition and free market, giving us all of the incredible products and the technologies that we have through this disruptive technology process, that they try to apply to everything as if it's like, you know, the market's going to solve everything. Well, it doesn't. Works great for technology. It doesn't work so great for housing. Here's what we all know about Moore's law. The number of transistors on a microcircuit doubles every 2 years. And that's why we get this declining cost curve. The price of, I think this is 1 megabyte of memory in 1958 was $10 million. And today it's 9 cents. So that's what we're accustomed to. We think that, you know, this market competition is constantly giving us these great products. But here's what happens with land. Now, I don't know about you, but I can see the difference between these two graphs, but most economists don't seem to be able to understand this. And why is that? Because competition for products drives prices down and makes us all better off. Competition for land drives prices up. So this is so simple, it just sort of goes over people's heads, I guess. So the conclusion is the market will never solve the housing problem. It's like throwing gasoline on a fire. And Carl Polanyi pointed out that land is a false commodity and it's a market failure. So trying to use the market to solve it is not going to work. So one of the solutions that I'm involved in is called a community land trust. And what you do is you basically take the land out of the market and you keep the market away from it, and you maintain the affordability of the land in perpetuity. And we are starting a community land trust in the Southern Moreton Bay Islands. I'll get into that in a minute, but I want to bring in the shared equity part of the conversation because that was the topic. Many people make the mistake of trying to apply a classic community land trust in Australia, where, as someone mentioned, I think the land is owned separately from the dwelling. So the not-for-profit owns the land, and then the resident owns the building. Well, in most places in Australia, unless you have a special situation like a retirement community or a mobile home park, that's illegal because you cannot separate ownership in Australia between the land and the buildings in most jurisdictions. So the way that you solve that is through shared equity. And that is that the not-for-profit and the resident become the tenants in common. They become the shared equity owners of the entire property. And the not-for-profit has at least a 20% share, and that pretty much covers the down payment. So if the person wants to get a mortgage, they basically can get a mortgage without having to come up with a down payment. And the down payment is a huge barrier for many people. And so this is how the shared equity makes the price of entry to ownership or rentals as well quite affordable for many more people. And then it gets passed on. The other key element of a shared equity community land trust is that there's a contract or there's a legal agreement that prevents the owner from keeping most of the profit. So the increase in land value, which is astronomically escalating, it goes back to the not-for-profit rather than to the resident, and that's what keeps it affordable. So that increase keeps getting passed on to the next person, so it stays affordable forever. So that's the key element actually of a community land trust, is it returns the increase to the organization or to the community rather than to the person, which is completely unearned income. But the people who get it are quite happy to receive it. So it's very difficult to break that cycle without removing the land from the market. And shared equity is how it's done in Australia. And we're trying to build one in the Southern Moreton Bay Islands. And here's kind of a sort of a future idea, creating a completely separate land system outside the market with its own financing system, basically community and public banks financing non-market land and non-market housing in parallel with the market system, rather than trying to fight against that system. As I think Michelle posted Bucky Fuller's statement, instead of fighting the old system, create a new system that's better than the old one. So that's the idea of community land trusts, using shared equity, public and community banks. And I will talk more about this tomorrow.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Gary. And
welcome.
Thank you for stepping in to talk about, and I think again, another really great example of, rethinking value. Now I'm just aware that Jason has just joined us. Jason, are you there?
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Very sorry, I mixed up my days.
Okay, we were wondering if you were going to join us. We do still have a short amount of time if you're wanting to present something briefly.
Yes, I think if I can take the opportunity, I would like to.
Sure. So we've got about 10 minutes, and then we'll probably need to wrap up. in preparation for the following session.
Okay, let me make this full screen. How do I do that? Okay, well, I'd like to show notes. So I'm just looking for how I'm going to share the screen without it being other things as well. Let's see. Listen to a document. I don't have much time. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
How many people do you have? 9. Hi, I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person and I mixed up the day. How's that?
Never mind.
Okay.
Maybe a notice could be emailed later if you think they're really crucial that we look at them. There might be a chance to, I don't know whether the organisers can arrange that or not.
Yes, I can forward the presentation as well. But let's see if I can get this to you now. And make this share. So I have the option to share.
Yep. You should have a share screen button there.
Yeah, is this the one? Share. Now you caught me a day early. So I actually have my document just pasted into a text box, but I will read through it with you and see how I go. I don't see anybody anymore. Oh, there you are. Okay. Okay. So I'd like, no, I wish I would have heard the person presenting shared equity. That would have been great. I could relate to what was presented. Okay, so I'd like to present a model that asks the question, how to reduce the costs of debt finance and equity that expects profit. And the idea there is to have the consumer prepay for rental credits as a method of funding. Okay, so that's the basic idea, and I'll go into it now. So a novel hybrid approach combining crowdfunding, mutual finance, cooperative and social enterprise. And when you put everything together in one long sentence, it does sound like a word salad. So I'm hoping to make that clear. So I'm asking the question in this proposal, could pre-sales of vouchers, credits for services provided this year and in years in advance be an alternative means of funding the service provision instead of debt finance with interest costs and equity, which has profit extracted away from the provision of services? Could service provider credits replace loans and shareholding, consumers as stakeholders? A consumer cooperative in which employees work for the members, like in mutual finance, what type of business structure, accounting and service booking model would be needed? Now, just a second, the text version I've got here is an older version. I'm just going to see if yes, this is better. In fact, I'll switch screens of what I'm sharing.
We can't actually see your notes at the moment.
Oh, sorry, I'm changing what I'm sharing now to a different screen because it's an older version that I've got showing to you there. My only problem is,
maybe rather than doing that, you could get, we've only really got 5 minutes. If you could just give us a bit of a précis of a summary of the key points might be good at this point.
Well, that's what the 20-minute presentation was. It was a presentation of it, but and I really wanted to elaborate on it. So it's difficult.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's not going to be possible, but it would be great to just get a summary of.
All right, help me understand how long I have left, please.
5 minutes.
Okay. All right. So I'd like the short of the concept, as I've said already, is where consumers, and in this case it's tenants, they form a funding group, a financial group, and I propose that that the first step in this proposal is tenant associations form, and that is people who are already renting from different places. They form an association, like a tenants union, but I'm calling it an association because in this case, tenants unions have focused on education, rights, and advocacy, whereas here an association plans to participate financially. So I'm proposing that tenants get together and form a association, and they apply as a head tenant for leases, long-term leases, where members are subtenants. Now I will, there's many ideas with the idea of tenant associations, but I will continue with this idea that if these tenant associations form, and they form the basis of a network of interested parties that then want to become more financial over time, they then are able to look at the potential for debt finance with a credit union. But looking further ahead, they'd like to get beyond debt finance and use their ability to fund from their own resources in the form of prepaid credits of rental, in which they will use that funding to invest, and which will reduce their debt finance and having to depend on a funding model that requires equity that has profit. So that's the basis of the tenancy proposal, the tenancyOS proposal. And there's two branches, building networks of the stakeholder, which is the tenant as a consumer that becomes cooperative, associates and becomes cooperative, wants to become financial, and then finds a way to platform their accounting in order to create economy of scale. And relating to probably the presenters, I saw CLT, which community land trusts, this idea that an entity, a trust holds assets and land leases to a housing cooperative that manages tenancy and building requirements, and the members themselves are voting members, democratic members, the stakeholder. And they have a relationship with asset holding, which is the store of value instead of ownership and shares. And the members that are in form of association then form relationship with a housing cooperative type of management of asset and tenancy bookings. But they use in this second stage is this effort to come to a scale in which they can use their economy of scale to manage their accounting. I'm sorry that I went completely off script, and therefore I'm trying to pull it all together in my mind, and that's my effort to summarize ad hoc of the ideas. I'd love to have questions if there's time for that.
Yeah, we've got a few minutes for questions. Thanks for that, Jason. And I think in terms of, rethinking value, it's such a critical one at the moment in terms of housing and availability. So thank you for that. Are there any questions for Jason?
I've just typed into the chat box my email and the link to the proposal. And I will get you also the presentation. So
I think John has a question. Yeah, John?
Yeah, Jason, yes, I was just wondering whether you floated your ideas with any politicians or and any type of response you might have got looking at different models.
No, I haven't yet. I started in last year, about 1 year ago, I started a Telegram group and presented my proposal to a bunch of people around the world who are interested in basically housing cooperatives. And I had quite a few interests they had their own projects that they were formulating. And so they wanted to learn. So it was a sort of a collaborative environment. We had 4 or 5 video conferences together. And as I said, I've got a link there to the proposal and with some resources, some comparison to timeshare and like learning from different industries, but I haven't approached a politician. So that is not as the proposal hasn't gone as far as actually, no, the proposal isn't ready for presenting to politicians. It's still in a collaborative stage of research on the 2 main branches, which is the tenant association pathways, which is a novel thing in itself as a bridge before housing cooperatives, and the accounting platform. So this is still in a proposal stage.
Yeah, just I mean, given that Anthony Albanese's background of growing up in public housing and needing housing, and Peter Khalil's got here in Wills, down here in Melbourne, in the Moreland area, he's got a webinar next Tuesday on public housing and so on. So there are a few people around who could be, you know, receptive and sympathetic to ideas of how to help people get into housing. I hope it. Good luck with developing it. Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Jason. And thanks everyone for coming along today. We'll need to wrap up now because the next session will be wanting to get set up and get started. So I just wanted to thank you all, and I'm sure we'll see each other around in the conference. So I'm going to close the meeting now. And if you're wanting to attend the next session, if you can just log back in, that will be great. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.